My name is Stephen Baskerville, Professor of Politics at the Collegium Intermarium in Warsaw. Pearl Davis recently held several podcast interviews with recognized authorities on the topic of family courts. The first interview was with me. The second is with Jeff Younger, a father whose toddler son was condemned to one of the most shocking and gruesome acts ever known to take place in a courtroom. An American family court judge ordered this young boy to be castrated. Younger's interview with Pearl Davis is not only poignant, it is also informative. If you listen to this interview, along with my own interview with Pearl only a few days before, you will know much of what you need to know about the corruption of family court. You will also start to understand what I've argued in my recent book, that family court and the entire welfare divorce machinery provided the blueprint for the coup d'etat that the Democratic Party staged in the United States over the last 5 years, and the unprecedented destruction it has unleashed both at home and abroad. Here I will highlight the most important points Jeff Younger makes in his interview with Pearl. I have excerpted several passages, and I will provide a brief commentary on each one. I endorse everything he says in these clips, and documentation for all his points and more is available in my books, such as Taken into Custody, The War Against Fathers, Marriage, and the Family. First, the corruption of family courts is breathtaking. Here are 2 clips showing that in family court, evidence is routinely ignored, tampered with, and fabricated.
He simply didn't put it into his report, and when I attempted to introduce it into evidence in family court, they wouldn't let me introduce it. So the judge never had to consider it.
Oh, so they literally...
That's what they do in family court. They limit what evidence can be presented to create a narrative that they want. In 3.5 years in her court, she never sustained a single objection, never allowed me to testify, and never allowed my experts to testify. So she limited the evidence that the court has available so that she can make her rulings the way she wants. That's how it works in family court.
So she limited the evidence so she could make the rulings that she wanted.
That's right. Yeah. My doctors never got to testify. I never got to testify. I was never able to bring evidence forward. They did not. My child actually made an outcry at one of the court-ordered counseling sessions. And he said, I'm embarrassed to wear dresses and I don't want to be a girl. The counselor threw my son out of the session, and it instigated a CPS investigation of me.
As Younger says in the next clip, family courts profess to defend a child's right of privacy. On this pretext, family court judges, school authorities, and other government officials withhold information from parents about what the officials are doing to their child.
Doctors, psychologists, and psychiatrists, all of them have the right to exert privacy for the child against the parents. So this is how schools are doing this transitioning secretly behind parents' backs. The school counselor or the school nurse will exert a right of privacy for the child against the parent, and there's no notification requirement. The care provider does not have to notify the parent that they exerted this right of privacy. And then they can treat your child and do whatever they want with your child in secret. It's really important, if you do have kids, you must never leave your children alone with a care provider. And basically that means you can't take your kid to a public school because they have counselors and nurses there that can do this legally. It was legal for the school to do this because the school counselor was doing it.
So there's a law in every state in this country where legally they can start to transition your kid and hide it from you.
That's right.
Because
that's
it's under...
why if you go to a well visit with a child, like to your pediatrician, they'll ask you to step outside.
No way.
No basis exists in law for a child's right of privacy against his or her own parents. Enforcing a child's right of privacy means that the court violates the family's right of privacy. Family court judges also punish parents who criticize the courts with legal penalties that include using their children as weapons. They cut off contact with their children, terminate their parental rights, and more. In other words, they use their position of public trust not to protect the public from wrongdoing, but to protect themselves from criticism.
Bloody Mary Brown then systematically using temporary orders, which are not appealable in the state of Texas. That's important because I was never able to go up to get them corrected. She used temporary orders to strip me of all parental rights and eventually put me on supervised visitation. Because I was running for political office and I was talking about my case as part of my political platform to get this law changed. And she took my children from me and gave me supervised visitation because I ran for office as a Republican and tried to get the law changed.
Wait, under temporary orders?
Yeah, a lot of people, you ask you focus on exactly the right things that most people overlook. So in civil cases, and you can do this in criminal cases too, but it's mostly done in civil cases. You can imagine, let's say it's a contract dispute over who owns some piece of property or something. Maybe it's a crane or something. Temporary orders can be issued so that one person who maybe is in possession of the crane can't damage it, so that the other person couldn't recover it if they won the lawsuit. It's designed to maintain the status quo so nobody loses any property or money while we're going to trial. Does that make sense? So temporary orders in family court, however, are quite different. Because in a civil trial, once the verdict comes in, that's it, you're done. That's one of the great things about the American system. Once the ruling's in, even if you don't like it, you're done and you don't have to deal with it anymore. You've got a verdict, you're finished. People can just move on with their lives. In family court, these things come up over and over again. So in practice, people live under temporary orders for the entire duration of the time they're raising their kids.
Unlike standard court procedures, family court cases never end, at least not until the child reaches adulthood, if then. Parents who have done nothing legally wrong are repeatedly summoned into court on some pretext, ordered to pay people they have not hired for services they have not received or requested, and jailed without trial if they are unable or unwilling. They become cash cows and slaves to judicial officials and their cronies. Though family courts are largely under the control of feminists, Republican and conservative lawyers, judges, politicians, and donors are deeply involved with their corruption, as much as are Democrats and liberals. They profit from the court's corruption, they cover it up, and they punish whistleblowers.
Fundamentally, what the problem is this: the donor class of the Republican Party is far left. So I'll give you an example. The transgender movement in the United States was not started by Democrats. It was started by Republicans. And I'm a lifelong Republican. I learned all this the hard way. Paul Singer is the largest donor to the Republican Party. And he founded the Human Rights Campaign. You know the yellow equal sign?
I don't, but that sounds familiar, but let me see.
Okay, the Human Rights Campaign is the largest and most powerful LGBT lobby organization in the world. It's the reason that the State Department put the pride flags on all our embassies worldwide. They are also the people that created the DEI scores for hiring LGBT people, and then they grade corporations on it, and that corporations live up to. That was founded by Paul Singer, who is the largest donor to the Republican Party. He also sues everybody. He's very litigious. And Paul Singer also funds the Manhattan Institute. He funds the Claremont Review of Books. He's a big funder of think tanks and so forth. I mean, you can see interviews that Manhattan Institute fellows have done with him where they talk about his LGBT advocacy. He started the transgender movement in the United States, and basically with the idea of codifying it into law. He's the largest donor to the Republican Party, and all these people in office receive money from him. And so you have this problem. You've got elected officials that are beholden to a far left donor class.
Hospitals make money by mutilating the bodies of children in the name of gender transitioning. The children become dependent on expensive medical procedures for the rest of their lives.
Well, the hospitals make tons of money. So every child that's transitioned is about a $4.5 million lifetime income stream.
Wow.
And that's a result of federal money. It's not an innate result. Yeah, the puberty blocker drugs are among the most expensive drugs sold in the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they have to stay on these hormones for the rest of their life, and they don't really get new genitals. They get a wound.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wound that looks like genitals, but it requires the same wound care that you would if you were shot or if you were cut. And that wound care is a lifetime. So they make tons of money from these kids.
Yeah.
Supervised visitation, where a parent and child are permitted to visit one another in a controlled environment and under constant supervision from social workers. This is designed not to protect children, but to vilify the father, make his children fear and hate him, and create material to use against the father in court.
So it's supervised visits. She moved to California. I have to fly to California, get a hotel, do a visit in LA County. Cost me about $2,000 a visit. I did 2 visits. They were awful. And I determined at that time that supervised visits are not in my child's best interests, and I won't do them anymore. At the supervised visits, they were forcing me to affirm my son was a girl. They were scolding me in front of my children. I was unable to just go to a park and throw a ball with my boys. Couldn't take them out for an ice cream. We were basically sitting in a room with bare white walls for 2 hours, and it was not pleasant for the boys or for me.
State governments are profiteering off divorce and fatherless children, through child support collections primarily. This is why they do nothing to control divorce, why they encourage it, and make it involuntary and inescapable. State attorneys general are the key office for maximizing revenue from divorce and fatherlessness. This is true whether they are liberal Democrats like Kamala Harris or conservative Republicans like Josh Hawley. This office is also the main stepping stone to higher offices like governors and congressmen. So it is very important that they maximize revenue from child support collections by creating as many divorces and as many fatherless children as possible.
They can't use discretion wisely. But of course, as you know, we're up against Title IV-D and the massive funding to the states. And that's what family courts really are. They're just funding vehicles. Texas gets $500 million a year from Title IV-D. So, what I've proposed in Texas is that you're not going to get the state to give up $500 million.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, good luck.
Right. So what I proposed is that agencies that collect these funds can't use them. They have to go to other purposes and can't benefit those agencies, which reduces their incentive to collect them.
Bar associations are the major power driving the corruption of family court. As Younger explains in this clip, judges and prosecutors have absolute immunity from prosecution, even for knowingly criminal acts. In other words, they are entirely above the law. Federal courts enforce this immunity and lawlessness.
It wouldn't be legal in any other industry,
right?
It couldn't be. It's legal because the Bar Association has a very special status in America. It's a private organization
mm-hmm.
that is granted the legal status to essentially manage a discipline for state governments.
Mm-hmm.
In California, it's gone so far that they have actually ruled that the Bar Association, a private company, the Bar Association, has sovereign immunity, just like the state government. You can't sue it. So the bar associations are super powerful, and they are the ones most responsible for legislation that allows this stuff to happen.
A peculiar rule, known as the domestic relations exception, excuses federal courts from reviewing family law cases for constitutional rights violations, even when the violations are serious. This rule has no basis in law or the Constitution. It is nothing more than an arbitrary decree of judges. This is why federal civil rights suits by parents and other litigants, however meritorious, are ignored and go nowhere. So family courts operate outside the Constitution.
So that's just how it is. Just like, there's the domestic relations exception in federal court. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people have asked me, Jeff, why don't you go into federal court on civil rights claims or go and get your constitutional rights upheld, in federal court? Well, the Supreme Court, since the establishment of family courts in the 80s, created a rule called the domestic relations exception. It's not a law, it's not a statute, it's not even a court case. It's just a rule promulgated by the US Supreme Court. And it says that they just won't take any cases out of family court from the states, no matter how egregious they are. They just don't take them.
Wow.
So every time you go out of family court and you say your constitutional rights were violated as a parent, they just dismiss the case. You never can take your case up.
Family law cases are often adjudicated in secret. The public and even family members are excluded. This directly violates the recognized principles of legal procedure and public justice. Records and transcripts are also falsified. This too is rationalized to protect family privacy. But the secrecy does not protect family privacy. It serves as a cloak to violate family privacy with impunity.
In California, they sealed my case. And there's no law in California that allows them to do that. So the public was not allowed to attend my trial. I can't give you the transcripts. I can't even give you the rulings. All those things are sealed. Even the appellate courts can't get them. So this has all been a secret trial. And judges have come to expect this kind of secrecy as a right of theirs. If you go into a lot of courtrooms, you're not allowed to record the proceedings.
Mhm.
You can't record them. Why would you not be allowed to record what's happening in a public hearing? If you go to a hearing of the legislature, like I've been to the Texas legislature and the federal legislature many times, you can just whip out your phone and record the debates that are going on the floor. Why can't you do that in a court? The reason is very simple. The judge wants to control the record of what was done in the court. And in family courts, they often lie. I've had transcripts come back where they just put 3 dots and the answer to the question isn't present.
Family court is a major cause of homelessness, perhaps the main cause. The father is stripped of everything he possesses, jailed, rendered unemployable, and released on the streets. Visit any men's shelter and ask how many residents have been through divorce court. You will find that it is close to 100%.
There's no doubt about that. I think that most homelessness is driven by drug use and mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all the other homelessness, other than those things, are driven by the family court system.
Child support is adjudicated with assembly line justice. Defendants queue up to be processed, and hearings last a few minutes or even seconds. This is also true of domestic violence accusations.
I'll tell you how it happens. I used to go down to Dallas County because I got so pissed off about it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just line up black men up on the 4th floor in Dallas County of the courthouse. The Title 4D courts are up there.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just line them up. The line goes down the stairway and out the building. And they just literally have a pipeline sending all of them into the jail for not paying child support. And what happens is they roll off the Title 4D program and they roll on to the prison reimbursement program, which is $93 a day.
Mm-hmm.
So the state, what happens when you enter the system is you become a ward of the state and a moneymaker for the state. They're happy to just throw you in jail. These men get tired of going 6 months in jail, a year out, 6 months in jail, a year out on child support issues. So what they do is they just burn their ID card and become homeless.
As Younger says in this next clip, child support is literally involuntary servitude. That is, slavery.
I would actually say that it is not a metaphorical form of enslavement. It is actual enslavement with punishment. I mean, they beat you and put you in a cage if you don't do what they tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's literal enslavement, and all of the pathologies that you would expect of a slave appear with men out of family court.
Conservative pundits call for men to man up and marry and start families. Yet because of the extreme injustices in family court, such calls are pointless, empty, and dishonest. Cynically, they are often issued by politicians like Senator Josh Hawley, who derive revenue and make money from the forced destruction of families by government officials.
And what I get frustrated with is the religious, like the traditional conservatives will shame men for not like manning up, and like the way they phrase it, it's like man up and marry these women, but the
Yes.
state's pointing a gun to their head. So,
Oh,
I mean, for
absolutely.
me, 18 years is a long time. Or even if she does it after a couple of years, 10 years, 12 years, I mean, that can completely destroy your life. So if you're 30 and that happens to you, you're not getting off until you're 48.
Yeah, your prospects of running a business or having a retirement are going to be destroyed. And it's not just that either. It's, let's say you decide to stay in the marriage the way these trads want people to. Let's say you stay in these marriages, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know men that are actually in this position. These guys are alpha male types too. They step and fetch for their wives. Whatever their wives tell them to do, they do. You know why? Because they're going to lose millions of dollars in their business. They're going to be homeless. They're not going to see their kids. Their kids' lives are going to be destroyed. So it puts men in a position where in a marriage they don't have any control. These trads don't get it. Like when you marry, you may think you have control, but the actual physical legal control is all from the wife.
Again, if you want more information about these points and many others, I urge you to get my book, Taken into Custody: The War Against Fathers, Marriage, and the Family. My other books are also available on my site, stephenbaskerville.com, and from amazon.com. Thank you for listening.